Welcome to Creative Courage Chats, a search for a new understanding of creativity and problem solving. I'm Alex Raffi. Hi everybody, back to another Creative Courage Chats here. I'm here with May May Luong.
Hello.
And we worked, this is actually a film that I helped out with a little tiny bit. But this is also a guy I know. Hopefully I'll get a chance to interview him too. But we worked on this together, this film. May May is a filmmaker and producer of many films. She's also in 2017, she's the Nevada Woman Filmmaker of the Year. She won that in 2017, which is exciting. I just realized that because she clearly doesn't brag enough. And that's how I found it on the website, so it was kind of cool. But hey, May May, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself and give people a little bit of a background of what you do?
Thank you for the intro. My name is May May. I grew up mostly here in Las Vegas. I came when I was in elementary school, but I really love Las Vegas, and I love Las Vegas living here and working here and just being a part of the whole community. But what I do is I'm a film producer mainly. And what that is we kind of put together all of the elements that are required in order to make the film, maybe directly or indirectly. And then I have done indie films, like indie feature lengths, like the one that's behind Alex over there, which was called Thor at the Bus Stop. And then short films. And I do currently, like how I make my living is like through commercials and corporate work. And then I also teach. So I teach at the college level. I teach at UNLV, and I teach now at Nevada State College.
That's great. And you are an alum of
I am.
UNLV.
UNLV. And I graduated from the UNLV film program twice.
Yes.
So I got my bachelor's degree in film, and then I also got my master's in writing for dramatic media. So that's also in the film department, but it's basically like screenwriting or writing plays and writing short form.
Well, I remember it was good. It was nice working with you because you were very reasonable and it was like, I guess to be a producer, I mean, producers are interesting to me because it seems like they actually have their hands on everything.
Yeah, that's what really drew me to producing. Yeah. I think I'm a curious person, or at least I like to say that. I want to understand everything that's happening. I want to know how it works. I want to know what people do. And that's really why I became a producer, because I was just intensely curious about everything. So if there was a camera, I'm like, well, how does that work? And how do you get the best shot? And I'd want to understand it all. And so through the curiosity is where I became the producer. And I was like, oh, I want to know how it all works so that I can put it all together. And then also, I also like to know what makes it better. So that helps you, getting the better crew, the better production design, better everything, just how to get it better.
It's funny because, people think creativity, oh, wow, that's the artist, the actors, and the director.
Like the director.
But really, producers have to solve tons of problems. Lots of, all the problems. And budgetary restraints. How do we tell this part of the story? And we don't have enough money to do what the artist wants to do, or the producer, writer, or director want to do. We just don't have the money to do that. And having to quell that need that they have is an art form in itself, I imagine.
I really believe it is. A lot of people, there's different types of producers too. So I normally, because I like to work in indies and I like to work like with people that I'm very familiar with and collaborate well with, they tend to be smaller. So I fulfill like the range of producer role when it comes to like creative producing or logistics producing or line producing. I'll do all of that. And a lot of people think producers aren't creative because they're like, well, they're the task makers, But really, the logistics, just trying to get everyone to where they need to be takes a lot of creativity and also a lot of really good people skills that it gets overlooked a little bit when you think about, creativity. It also takes creativity to be a good people person.
Right. Yeah. And also it is kind of the highest form of creativity is problem solving. So in my opinion, so, it's easy to come up with a great idea. Finding out how to share the idea in a way that's efficient and makes sense makes
Hmm.
a great idea possible. A
Hmm.
really good idea that is not produced well is a terrible idea, because
Yeah.
nobody cares about that.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. You're completely right.
yes. So you need to be able to get it out there and to make it happen. So I think that's an important side of the thing, because a lot of times I think people that are wanting to be artists or wanting to be, that's the side they're not thinking of, is the execution of the work, the
Hmm.
commitment, the fact that it's a job, the fact that it's like, guess what, you want to be an artist, you still got to get up early in the morning and be prepared and show up with a, and understand that you're dealing with executives who don't maybe have your talent, but they have expectations, and you have to
Hmm.
be able to impress them and do whatever it is you need to do if you want to practice your art, you
You
know
do, and you have to work really hard. And it's not, I'm not saying that, most people aren't going to make it. I really don't believe that at all. I
Mhm.
just try to explain that you can be incredibly talented, but if you don't show up, then no
Right.
one can see that you're incredibly talented. So, like, being there and being present is sometimes more important or just as important as the actual talent. Because people have to be able to see that you have that talent. So you have to be there.
And telling people, you know
Yeah.
that you're not likely going to make it. It's very very small percentage of people make it. I think that's a good way of discouraging them, but also a good way to motivate them if if they're in the right mindset, right? If
Mhm.
you're told not that you can't do something, and you're the kind of person that runs out and says, I'm going to do it because they said I can't do it, that's kind of the right mindset to be in. I mean, it's either you'll succeed or you'll just be a pain in the butt to everybody.
Yeah, yeah, but at least you're there and you're
Exactly.
like
If you're tone deaf,
you're doing
you,
it.
if you're tone deaf, you probably shouldn't be singing, or take some classes. That's the other thing is, and I don't know, you work with young people.
I do. And I
So
like to work with both, like college level students, but I also like to work with young people. Talking about like grade school kids. I love the creativity that comes out with them and
yeah,
also being able to encourage them, especially young girls. So all
yeah.
ages.
Well, that's the thing is, I think that it's great. There's these phases, right? I think when they're really young, they
Hmm.
need to be encouraged and they need to be not unstifled, right?
Hmm.
But when they start getting into the teen years, I think that it's not about stifling. You don't stifle them, but what you do is they need to get realistic about the work. That
Yeah.
if you're serious, it is work. I mean, you have to really practice, and you have to really try to do things and try to learn the. See, when I talk to musicians, like young musicians, 'cause I talk to a lot of kids too and stuff, and I do my workshops, and sometimes I
Hmm.
have young musicians walk up and I say, well, what kind of music do you like? Well, I like, and they tell me one form, like maybe it's rap or something like that, and I go, well, who's the artist, your favorite artist? And they'll tell me, and I say, well, who is their influence? And they won't know, and so I'll say, well, there you go. Start there. You have a favorite artist, find out who influenced them and made them who they are. And then when you find
Hmm.
that person, learn that person's music. And then that person, you'll learn who influenced them. And this whole history and chain reaction, it's going to be interesting what you discover, because you'll start seeing that there's between other artists, there are intersections where they start intersecting. And I always joke that it always leads down to Robert Johnson, the godfather of the blues. It always goes back to that one point of that guy. But but it is, I think, the same thing with filmmaking. I think if there's a certain kind of films you like, or certain kind of filmmakers you like Akira Kurosawa is one of those guys, right? Where
Hmm.
everything leads to him
Yeah,
for some reason.
yeah, it does.
Yeah, and I think that in the storytelling and all that kind of stuff, I think that that's an interesting thing. Is become kind of a historian and learn a little bit and get educated, right, about art
Hmm.
that you're into.
There was
So,
I was teaching a class last semester and I thought it was really interesting because we talked to different filmmakers, in all different stages of where
mhm,
they are so that the students can kind of understand like a lot of them are similar to where they were at some point or even just barely beyond where they are. And there was one person who I talked to, I was pre-interviewing them, and he was talking about how, like find people that you look up to. And they might not be filmmakers at all. They might
mhm.
be, sports figures, or they might be, historical figures, and then learn about them and learn about what made them motivated. And, that might help you figure out how to get where you need to get. It might not always be in that same, I don't always need to look at filmmakers, but I can look at other people who are successful in their own right. And I think that that's kind of the same thing with you. It's like not just to be educated about a specific, music or film or whatever, but maybe just about a lot of other things and a lot of other people too that can
Right.
help you on your path.
Well, it's funny because the main thing I think I'm always trying to take a few steps back. Now you tell me what you think, because I know I'm not a filmmaker. I've dabbled in filmmaking, but dabbled. I mean, I've dabbled in a lot of things. I'm like a general specialist. I'm not a specialist. Generally, I've done everything that there is to do kind of creatively in a small bits,
Uh-huh.
I know a little bit about it, but when I talk to filmmakers, what it seems to me is even as a producer, you're well aware of the story that's being told, right? I mean, you're involved creatively even in the storytelling sometimes on this thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
and that's important, is to be a
Mm-hmm.
storyteller.
Uh-huh. That's the most important, is to
Yeah.
be the storyteller.
And I think that's, and so to be a storyteller when you're in school, it's funny because I tell the students, I go, well, you're interested in being a filmmaker, but guess what? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm gonna mute turn on my do not disturb too. I
Oh,
forgot to do that.
yeah.
So I had to stop stinging.
I'll edit out that little boom part there.
Oh yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
I'll just edit it out. But yeah, no. What I was trying to get at is um, that while kids are in school, they can learn some elements that will be important in becoming a filmmaker in school, in terms of, in English class, learning
Uh-huh.
how to speak, and you're reading things and you're learning things, and in history, you're hearing our
Oh
successes and
yeah.
failures, and that's going to feed, maybe there's a story in history that might be relevant in going forward and doing something. even
Mm-hmm.
even if you want to be a game developer, where so many kids want to be
Oh
game
yes.
developers, you kind of have to be a filmmaker nowadays.
You do. It's so cross. It just everything always crosses, and like I think we're calling it interdisciplinary now,
Okay.
where it's just theater and film, they cross over. Game making or game development and film. Lots of filmmakers are going to film school, but they actually want to be game developers, or game developers are making films.
Right.
Same thing with commercials. A lot of commercial directors become film directors, or music video directors become film directors. It's all just about telling the story, really.
Well,
Um,
isn't that interesting, though, to think that the thing that makes people want to be filmmakers in any capacity is films.
oh yeah,
and,
yeah. That's
and it's
usually how it gets started.
yeah, and it's because you watched them, and what is it you loved about them? And you loved that
Uh-huh.
it moved you, and you felt something, and you related. So when was your first moment? Like, how I talk about moments of discovery. What was that moment that made you say, "This is okay. I want to live in this world. I want to live."
Yeah.
What happened to you?
I was thinking about this because I had a feeling you might ask
Yeah.
something like this. And my story is a little bit different because I never grew up watching a lot of movies.
Mhm.
I grew up here in Las Vegas, and my family I didn't have a close family. So they didn't take me to the movies. Like I didn't have anybody, a lot of the stories are like, my dad took me to the movies when I was little, and well, that didn't really happen with me.
Yeah.
I actually spent most of my childhood, it feels like running around the block in Las
Yeah.
Vegas heat. That's what I remember. But I was always really into theater. So that's how I started, like
Oh, okay.
storytelling in theater. And in Las Vegas, there's there's Rainbow Company. I don't know if you've ever talked to anybody in Rainbow Company, but they're such an amazing organization. It's
Okay.
an organization where it's a children's theater.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so the children, they learn everything about the theater. They have to act, they have to build the sets, they have to work the lights, they have to do sound
Oh,
for
that's
the theater.
fantastic.
Yeah,
If you
it's
can hook
amazing.
me up with somebody from there, that would be great. I'd love to
Oh
talk to
yeah,
them.
it was like the most amazing organization that and I have such fun memories even to this day of the whole process. So I was really into theater, and then what happened was I moved to California, and I'm really technical. Like I like computers, I like cameras, I like buttons, and so I started in tech. And so I worked in a internet company in San Diego, which went to San Francisco, and then I worked there for 3 years in a cubicle. And to kind of make a long story short, 9/11 happened, and I was like, what am I doing in this cubicle? So I wanted to get back into theater, and I started at UNLV, and I was in the theater department. And it just didn't work out because it was like, I just wasn't, it just wasn't a fit at that point in my life anymore. So someone told me about the film department. And again, I just never really had been the kind of person who was always watching movies. So my story isn't the same as that. But what I really liked was actually the logistics. So I should have thought about this a long, long time ago that, you know, producing was going to be more of my thing, you know. Theater, I love theater. I still do. I watch theater all the time. The theater is in like in a space, a specific space. The lights are usually set in a specific place. But with film, the world is so wide open. Like we could take the camera anywhere, and the logistics of it was like, where are we going to place it, and how does that affect the audience depending on where you place it. It's like, what can you do? How can we do this? How can we do it differently? And so it's like these questions that can be answered through film. Logistically, was really what drew me to filmmaking.
That feels satisfying to me.
Yeah,
to be like, in a situation where there's that scenario. And I actually like a little bit, this is weird, but I kind of like the fact that you're the one, you're like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain figuring this out. And
usually I try.
You know what I'm saying? And then it happens. And then you can sit back and say, the only reason this happened is because of my idea. And nobody really
and even the collaboration process of it, you know, like the riffing when you're in a pre-production meeting and you're sitting there, you know, with a director or whatnot, and we're like, okay, we really need to, let's just take Thor at the bus stop, for example, right? Thor has to ride the bus that has to go. Well, we knew we couldn't get a city bus, even though that's kind of what it should have been. So it's just even the little problem solving that comes from, well, how are we gonna get the bus? How do we put the, you know, how do we sell it to the audience that this is the bus that actually does go around the city? So those kinds of problem solvings, especially when you have zero resources, like that budget was like less than zero. It feels like.
I don't think it had a budget.
No, it really didn't. It was
everything budget. I did for free. So
exactly, me too. And so you're looking and you're like, well, how do you do this with no resources? And those are those fun moments, like the spark where you're like, oh yeah, we could do it this way, or we could do that, or, you know, making the police car out of, I think they were like Tupperware tubs or something. It's like, you know, they were like CDs and like Tupperware tops that went on the, you know, like the little police light. Like we just couldn't even.
Nobody was looking at that. They were looking at the guy in the police car.
And that's what's important.
Yeah.
But it's like those kinds of problem solving that is just a little bit beyond what theater provided at that time.
It's interesting. It's an interesting, definitely an interesting career path. But yeah, you have made some. So you have a lot of production credits on a lot of films that you've made. Which one do you think was the most challenging? Not in terms of budget, in terms of just you know, you're pleased. It was hard. It was like a hard thing, but you were pleased to come out with it. Do you have one, or you don't have to have one?
Which one? Let's see. There was, I mean, probably the most challenging was the track. I like working within constraints, which is really great, but the track had a lot, a lot of constraints, because it was a little bit more beyond working with a group of friends that I've been used to working with. So the circle of people that I was working with expanded beyond like Jerry and Mike and the Lightforge guys and everything. So that's always a challenge. It all worked out well and it all worked out great, but the track also had, you know, unions and contracts and like much more formalized everything than previously. So I think that one was probably the most challenging. But at the same time, it was really rewarding. I mean, when you think about what came out of it, it was a beautiful film.
That's great. I'm gonna put links to all these trailers for these that out there. So on this when we share it. And you worked with, and I know you worked with David on the Thor at the bus stop, but also on Two Little Monsters. You worked on that. I remember
Uh-huh.
when he was working on that, and I remember thinking, wow, and I don't know, I actually haven't seen it, but I do
Mm.
remember hearing about it or seeing a trailer, an early trailer or something of it, and think, wow,
Hmm.
that's a tough subject.
Yeah, yeah. I sometimes I'll read comments and stuff about it,
Yeah.
and there's people who have never seen it really hate it. So
Yeah. Yeah, right. But Schmoller, David Schmoller, of course, he's legendary in his own right
Mhm.
in the horror film genre. He's
Mhm.
come up before. I spoke to Tom Devlin, who's the special effect. You know him, he's a special effects
Yeah.
guy here
Mhm.
locally. And yeah, he was talking about how you know, he had a chance to give him an award or something like that at one point.
Yes.
Yeah, but he's an interesting guy. I'm trying. He hasn't returned any of my calls. I wanted to talk to him.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. I know he's tough. I know he's a tough one to beat. But I love the fact that there is, what country is it that he's just a legend? What country where where everybody, like, crowds show up?
I'm not sure. I mean, he shot a
There,
couple films in Italy, so it might be Italy.
yeah, it's like there's a specific country where all of his films
Yeah.
are huge, like they're huge and everything,
Think about it. I mean, I'm sure he's mentioned it, which is funny that I can't remember, but I
yeah,
know it might be Italy. I mean,
yeah.
he's such a legend.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's a
just,
funny thing.
yeah. Go ahead.
He'll tell me that sometimes people mistake him for Spielberg. I'll be like, yeah, I've had a couple people think I was Spielberg,
Yeah.
but
His
no.
films, yeah, I have some of his films, some of the smaller films he did, and everything that are really great. But he had such an interesting career, and he's really created some iconic films, and that must be
Yeah.
fun because I know you work closely with him and have worked closely with him in the past,
Hmm.
um, and everything. So that's interesting too. It's just the influences, and interesting to be able to work with some talented people.
Oh yeah.
And at all levels, right? I mean, you work with
Mhm.
people at all levels. I know you worked with the people from True Blood, right?
I
And stuff.
did.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and that was a great series. That was a pretty interesting series, you
Oh
know.
yeah, and then I did a little pilot that never got picked up, but for Danny Trejo, which was great. Um, so yeah, all different levels. Like just now, I just completed post production on a short film with one of the grad students at UNLV. So I mean, if you got a story to tell, it doesn't really matter, you know, whether or not you've worked in the industry for 20 years versus you're still a student or you're graduating. So there's so many talented um, great storytellers out there that is just like they're just waiting for, or they're looking for someone to help them out a little bit, and I'm always happy to do it because I just think, you got to get your start somewhere.
You're right. And you've been
Hmm.
around and you've done things and everything, and you're very encouraging. You know, you're not a stifler. You know, you see,
Hope not.
from what I can tell, and especially because you're a teacher. I think if you're a teacher, you don't tend to do that. But how exciting is it when you start talking to people, because it's kind of this one of these artistic careers that in their heads just kind of explode when they start imagining what it would be like to really be working on films, and
Hmm.
it's fun when you start kind of working people through the educating them as to the process of getting there. I think that's,
Uh-huh.
it's really neat, and it's really fun, especially with young people, because it would, like, if I talk to somebody in terms of the kind of art I do, and I'm talking to somebody young who's just getting started, and then I'm giving them advice on it, I'm rediscovering what I love about the art form, because you forget after a while
Yeah.
doing, but you start to rediscover it. You start to see it through their eyes, and you're going, yeah, what I do is kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the best parts about it. And no matter how busy I get with like commercial work or whatnot, I don't ever give up my teaching, like my classes. So I actually did it one time. I took a staff job over at MGM Resorts, and it was a great opportunity. It was a nice chance to be able to just have like stability in my life a little bit, like go to work again, but still work in production.
Right.
But I only lasted for 5 months because I couldn't teach at the same time.
Oh,
And so that was one of the main reasons. I was like, well, I really want to just go back to working with students, because not just do you kind of rediscover why you like it, but they're innovative. So the thing that I worry about with myself is like, well, I've been doing this for so long, I know how it's supposed to be done.
Right,
So
yeah.
then you're always like, okay, you get into your comfort zone. You're like, I'm just going to do it the way it's supposed to be done. But with the students, they sometimes don't have the resources to do it that way, or they're just trying to figure it out so they can innovate a little bit more. And that's where a lot of the new ideas come from, or the new methods, or just the new ways of storytelling that maybe I'm just getting a little bit too busy to keep up with,
Mhm.
social media and all that other stuff. So I just can't imagine not being in the classroom to share that with them, at the same time, like, also opening their eyes on what is possible, or how to not take everything so literally in film. So that's the other thing, that when you're a filmmaker, the first thing is sometimes you're like, well, I need a bedroom. So they literally go and they look at bedrooms. But you don't necessarily have to shoot in a real bedroom. It's like those little things that, you got to get people out of that mindset. But
Mhm.
at the same time, they have other great ideas that they share with you.
Yeah. And then they sometimes they kind of surprise you, right? With some
Oh
of the thought.
yeah, all the
Right.
time.
'Cause
Hmm.
you're never not learning.
No, I'm never not learning. And there's always things to learn, always things to catch up with. Or for me, I'm backwards learning sometimes, I feel like, because like I told you before, I never watched a lot of movies, so
Right.
I always feel a little bit behind on that.
Yeah.
So I can always go back and watch a lot of movies. And
But that's not even but there's something more important, and what, for whatever reason, you have this, you're so generous in wanting to explore a thing and then wanting to share it at the same time. And I think that that's, for me, is the what I think is, you know what my focus is, creativity, and the focus on try to share it with a lot of people. And it's people like you who actually take the time to inspire people, not with the intent to inspire, not in an arrogant way, in a more of a, I love this, you might love this too way. And I
that's
think,
really nice of you to say.
well, I think that that's incredibly important. And I think that it's lacking in a lot of places, because I do think that a lot of the problems that we're dealing with, it's I think we need more people like that, because our kids, I think now, that's the source of hope that they get a lot of, where do kids get inspiration? Well, if they're not getting it from their parents at home, guess what? Maybe they'll get it from Star Wars. Maybe they'll get it from a book they read, right? Maybe they'll get it from some artwork they see or music they listen to. Art has a way of filling holes.
Hmm.
And those of us who live in that world are the fillers of the holes. There are holes that we're filling. Other people have the same holes.
Oh yeah.
And so this material that we're putting out there becomes kind of universal and incredibly important. And I really, really, really think it's incredibly important. So for everybody that hasn't thanked you for inspiring them, I'll tell you right now, I'm sure you have inspired a lot of people, so I'll thank you for them for
Oh,
doing that. I'm not wrapping this up. Sounds like I'm
I know.
wrapping it up.
Yeah, it
But,
totally
but
does. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
no, but I just think that's important to say. And I've been talking to a lot of people and you're one of them. I've always had high regard for you from when we first met, and because you've always been very pleasant and open to things. And even though we don't talk much, and we haven't talked much, I've always kept that in my mind. That's why I reached out to you today. So from your perspective, now I've kind of laid out kind of my personal view, and I've shared with you kind of my perception of you, and you're handling it very well. So what do you say to these young people? Is there something you commonly say to them to encourage them? Is there something that you normally do in your classes, or when you speak to anybody that's curious about filmmaking in any way?
Yeah, I have, like, my journey towards like teaching students has gone from being very rigid. I'm like a producer, like a taskmaster
Yeah,
too, I'm like, I
yeah.
want someone to do this, like a number 1, 2, 3. And I've gone from that to less of that and more about talking about like what I believe that everybody really is an artist. I don't think that, being an artist is like this exclusive thing. We are all people who want to express something, who have a
Yeah.
story to tell. And so it's just trying to get them and everybody to learn how to tell their story and learn how to express what is important to them. So and it's like telling people that I'm interested, and other people are interested too. They want to know your story, and they want to know what you care about, and they want to know what it is you're trying to express. And that's what I think art is anyway. It's like someone trying to express something from themselves and communicate it to somebody else. So for my students, I just want them to know that there are people out there listening, and that your story is important. You may touch somebody with your story that you would have never known that you were going to touch, because they relate to you, or because they never knew that someone else felt that way. So those are things that, as an artist, as student artist, is like, just tell the story so that other people can be inspired by them as well.
I love that. I think that's my rewind moment. I do a rewind moments, and that's that rewind that, listen to that again. But this kind of also reminds me of when you're a parent and you have your kid, there's a large shift in the way the world looks to you, right?
There really is.
Yeah. So the whole world changes. And it's hard to explain to somebody until it happens to them. It's like it sounds silly. It sounds like, yeah, right. No, it's the truth. The whole world, it's because your perspective changes. And I think that happens at small levels when you decide you have a value. Like if you start to decide, like when you decide I'm going to be a filmmaker. Well, the only way that you're going to really succeed at this, and it's not just going to be just a whim that is eventually going to fade away and then you end up going to do something else, is if you take that particular value you've decided and start to look at the world differently, because it should change for you. You now are going to be a storyteller, so you need to observe the world differently. Observe the world like a filmmaker. If you're with somebody and they see something and they're very moved by it, find out why they're moved by it. Learn about that, because then you learn about them a little bit more. And then you start understanding the human condition a little bit. And then when it becomes a lot easier to tell a story, because the best way, and I'm talking too much, but the best way to tell a story, in my view, when you're a true artist and a good storyteller, is to understand the characters within the story and just put them in a situation and let them tell you what's happening. Because it's this weird feeling, because I write a lot and I have characters, and when I write the characters, it's almost like you don't need to know what's going to happen. They just start to interact, and then in your head it happens, and then it leads you in a direction, and it always leads to something interesting, and it's surprising, and it's you surprising yourself, right? Which is crazy. Right. And there's this magic in the creative process that a lot of people don't. It's not magic though, but I mean, I just call it that, for lack of a better term, is that people don't realize, but that everybody's experienced. Because what I just described, everybody has had a moment like that, where they felt like they've surprised themselves with something they did, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's the kind of stuff that a lot of that drives people into what you do, into the things that you do, and even into teaching, even to want to be a teacher. First of all, that's crazy for people to want to be a teacher, because it's not an easy. That's the hardest pride job.
It isn't easy sometimes, but it is like so worth it. I mean, when you were talking about, like when you become a parent, it just reminded me, like before I was a parent, I didn't realize how important my stories were to, like, I guess I disregarded them all the time,
right.
But now that my daughter's growing up, and I remember those times when I was her age, actually, as she grows and you're like, oh, I remember when I was 5. And then there's a story, that I had of what I experienced back then that is so much easier to use now. Like a lot of the writing that I do is actually based on when I was a kid. I love writing about childhood. And it just doesn't occur to me how important it was until I saw her going through those kind of same time periods.
That's beautiful though, because you're right. That's like 100% right. That's another rewind moment, because when you get older and you're talking to your kid and you're wanting to teach them something, sometimes you literally went through you feel like you can tell them the same moment you had.
Yes.
right? My daughter had recently had an issue with a friend of hers, or former friend of hers,
Oh.
who she loaned money to. It was a
Uh-huh.
lot of money. She doesn't have a job, so she saves up her money. Her friend needed money. Well, her
Uh-huh.
friend did not pay her back, and
Oh.
and and kind of just took advantage of her. And
Mhm.
I said, there were a lot of hints that led her to seeing that this person was probably going to do this. And I don't
Uh-huh.
mean to be cynical about it, but I said, you got to be cautious about these things. And it was like $300 that she lost.
Oh,
And I
that's a
said,
lot.
it's a lot for a kid. And so I
Yeah.
said, but in big scheme of things, you learned a lesson for $300.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was enough. She got their $300 back. She figured
Oh,
it out.
she
She
did.
got it back. Which, so
She probably learned that from you, like the determination. She was
she's
like,
just, yeah, she's been paying attention to some at some level. I thought it was just going to be, because I was like, there you go, that's your lesson. You'll remember that one time I lost that $300, and I'll never forget that lesson. But she ended up turning it around and getting the money back, so she learned it, which is
did
actually
you have
probably a
a
better
similar
lesson.
did you have a similar situation when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, where I loaned money to a guy. Yeah, I had a story like that, and I did it because he was an old friend of mine and he was struggling, and then you know and then it's a long story. I don't want to get into too much, but he did. I think it was about 30 years later. I got a call,
Uh-huh.
he says, "You remember me?" I go, "Oh yeah," and he goes, I've been going to therapy, and my
Uh-huh.
therapist told me I had to reach out to people I've screwed over, and I have to apologize. So I'm apologizing to you for doing that. I'm going, that's fine. That's fine. You're okay? And he's like, yeah, okay. That's fine. Thanks a lot. And I just, but it was interesting that it finally came back to me. But anyway,
Oh, that
yeah.
is really cool.
Isn't it
I
funny? We're talking about filmmaking and now I don't know where we're going. We're
like
going
money.
all over.
Just like lessons, life lessons. It's
Life
just turned
lessons.
into, life lessons video as opposed to filmmaking.
Well, I think that's important too, right? I mean, those are things that are so great. Like, okay, like I again, I know I'm interviewing you, but I tend to sometimes I talk too much sometimes in these things.
These are
But
good.
I am writing a book, and I'm writing
Uh-huh.
it about my life, but it's all in metaphor.
Uh-huh.
And so all the characters in it are not only people that were in my life, but they're also moments and things. They're representative of moments in my life. And it's a little
Uh-huh.
boy who goes in a boat and he goes out in the ocean. And the boat represents his life and the ocean represents the world. And all the people he gathers into his boat are all the people that he's come across in his life, not only people, but things.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because I've been in a situation lately where because I'm writing this book and it's becoming like a freaking novel. It's huge. But because since I've been writing this book, I've been really thinking back in my life and all those moments,
Oh, that's awesome.
and I'm remembering things, and I'm piecing things together. And the act of going back, because I've been saying this for years, is that
Uh-huh.
you need to find your moments of discovery because it teaches you a lot about yourself. And I'm
Uh-huh.
actively doing it to write this book now. I'm right. If you start doing if you start doing that,
You proved yourself.
I proved myself right. It was very gratifying. No, but I started to realize why I feel the way I feel, and I also started realizing a little bit about your mortality and the amount of time we have,
Uh-huh.
and the amount of time we have to share things. And I think
Yeah.
people who share things are blessings on the world because
Mhm.
we're only here for a blink of an eye, right?
Yeah.
And all we have to go on is our experiences with each other, and I think that that's an important thing, and I think that's kind of what we're all trying to do as artists, as working artists, at every level, is try to make connections, right, with each
And I
other.
think that that's important to try to keep up just in general because it's with the internet and with social media and with video gaming, like the ones where you can chat with each other and everything,
Oh yeah.
that some of that like connection is false. It's not the same as me and you even video chatting here where we're actually talking,
Yeah.
like actually talking about what has happened to us in the past or what
Mhm.
stories we have, because all of that is very just like instructional almost.
Yeah.
Like you need to go over, turn left and shoot at this person. It's not like really communicating stories, or communicating about yourself. And the just to practice it and to do it is something that I think everyone should do and continue to do, or at least really you have to put yourself out there to do it too.
Yeah.
And so
Is have the guts to
do it.
have a conversation and then see where it leads to, and see her. And that's kind of what happens with this. You know, at the beginning, we started with one thing, and then we got into covering a lot more than I thought we would. And I'm actually feeling kind of inspired. I think I'm going to go back to writing. I haven't written in my book in a while, and now I'm like, I think I got to go back to that.
Well, your book sounds like it's going to be really good. Is it?
Yeah.
It is a novel? Like a?
It's supposed to be a children's book, and
I thought it was, because I thought you had posted it like before. It was a children's book.
It is. I'm calling it a children's book, but it has moments in it that are a tad bit scary. And because I'm speaking to kids, but I'm speaking to them with honesty. I'm not trying, and there are times when life is tough, and I'm putting some things in there that are a little bit scary. There's a moment where the boat gets in a storm, you know, because the world changes, you know. You brought up 9/11. You know, sometimes the world seems crazy and it causes things to fall apart, and your life feels like it's not the same as it was, you know. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that happens every once in a while, but there's always you know, things to learn is what I'm hoping. To be honest, I'm not trying to be specific about what I'm saying. I'm just telling the story, and I'm using metaphor, and if somebody gets it, that's great. So I'm just kind of going. So and hopefully, and I'm writing it in free verse. So it's not a poem, but it's in free verse. So, and it's because I have like ADD. I don't know if you could tell, and I get bored easy. So I have to make sure every line feels like it's important. And so when I write it, I try to do it that. And so it should be a quick read for people, you know, when they go through it. And again, I'm illustrating it. So on top of that, so it's going to take forever to finish this. But and I'm sure you've seen some of the illustrations I shared on it. But anyway, this isn't about me. I'm talking about myself.
Oh no, I mean, it's about creativity.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So,
I keep looking at Jerry over here.
Oh, I know, right over there.
You know,
that seems so long ago. I think is that like 13 years ago?
It was long. Yeah, I do remember. I think I remember that. Did you build this? Oh, here is it over here. Did you build this, or did you figure out how to build that?
I think Jerry ordered this, the hammer.
Yeah, but I think he said that handle was actually the leg of a chair or something.
He might have built that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like the on the wall that was designed.
Oh, the logo.
And the bus stop sign.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it was Andy Taylor who did that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's great.
He did a lot of the special effects, right? He did some of the special effects in that.
I think so, yeah. I mean, because I think so long ago, I can.
I'm pretty sure that bus stop sign ended up being impaling somebody, and there.
Yes, he did that one. Mm-hmm.
By the way, it was a comedy, but it was a joke, kind of a murder thing. But,
no, it was. I look back on that movie and like look at all the people that were involved in it and how we're still collaborating even to this day, and you're just like, wow, we've all grown up.
Yeah, but it was. I'll tell you, that movie is special.
Yeah.
I think it's special, and they put everything they had into it. And the Thompson brothers are very talented filmmakers in Las Vegas. And if anybody gets a chance to see Thor at the Bus Stop, I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube. Check it out. Yeah. It's super quirky, and you got to realize there was zero budget.
Yep.
And so there was that, but it was a blast for them to make and for you to be part of and everything. And I had a little taste of that. I helped out a little bit with the marketing of it, but it was fun. It was a very fun thing to work on. And you are a treat. I like talking to you.
Well, it's not just. I mean, not just that. I mean, to me, it was a good movie, great story. It was low budget, but the collaborative process is also part of it. To think about, like, if you're gonna work on something, to one, be proud of it, but also be like spend the moments having fun and being happy. Like these film projects can last, you know, a year, 3 years, 5 years plus, especially if they're low budget. And for me, it's not worth being miserable for 3 to 5 years. Like when I get into a project, I want to make sure that, you know, we're all great collaborators and we're all just having, it sounds cheesy to say fun, you know, but if you're not enjoying it, then why do it?
And that's kind of good advice for more than just filmmaking, I think.
I think so. Because, I mean, I don't know when this will end up posting, but we're in a time right now where it's just like, take some time and look through your past a little bit, like discover what happened to you and what happened makes you who you are. Some of the stories that I have, I'm like, I suppressed them a little bit, but now that I have a little bit of time, I'm like, oh yeah, the reason why I am the way I am is because this happened to me, and it's a really important story, my story, and to share with other people. But you just never know, like in the time period we're at right now, like what's going to happen next. So just enjoy the moment that you have now.
Yeah, and I actually think that's not a bad way to start a strategy, is to start from thinking about that. You start from the end result that you want. You got to know what it is, and then you take that end result and you put it at the beginning of your strategy, so that you know that that's going to be the source of your ideas going forward. I kind of think that's what they need to do in the school district. I think that there's a lot of discussions about things and how they're going to open up the schools, but what are we doing for our kids? It's about our kids at the end of the day. So how are we helping them? Everything has to start with, every
The
decision
goal.
has to be about, how does this idea help the kid that is in the hardest situation, right? The kids that don't have all the access or the lunches or the money or even the internet or Wi-Fi. Those are the kids that we need to think about first, and then build up from there. And anyway, so that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, that's the next conversation, part 2.
It's a part 2.
It's the CCSD, the CCSD conversation.
Exactly. I just know
While
too
we
many. I know too
pontificate
many
about.
teachers. I just know too many teachers, and I have a lot of empathy for teachers. So.
Oh yeah, I know. I just like, everyone's being put in an impossible situation, and it's like, how do we move through this? But it's also not one box doesn't fit all either, and it's so hard for CCSD now that we're getting into part 2. CCSD is so big that it's like this, jamming everybody into one box is really hard.
It is, but we need to work together. That's the biggest thing. Is no infighting. We need to figure out we're all heading in the same direction.
Yeah.
And everything. And you're an American. And that's what we were founded on, is figuring this stuff out. That's why we have 3 branches of government. That's why we have a Congress that works with 2-party system. Our job is to have different opinions, but figure out solutions and move forward and find things out and going forward. But anyway, so.
Well, since we're still talking about it, I just think to turn it back into, it's about problem solving and collaboration.
Yes.
And that's what America was kind of like always built on.
Right.
It's like problem solving and collaboration. You got to do both, and having those skills is really important.
Yeah, and you can't solve problems.
Solving CCSD's problems all interlined together.
Right, we need each other, right, to solve problems.
Yeah,
we need to be able to figure out how to work together,
and being able to hear from different perspectives too. Like if you're always hearing, same with storytelling, if you're always hearing the same stories from the same people, then you're not really expanding the possibilities. So we need to go out beyond our little circle and hear stories from, people that we don't normally interact with, or people who, are from a different walk of life, in order to be able to help solve those problems in filmmaking and in CCSD.
So with that wisdom, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to thank you for making the time. Yeah, making the time. I hope this was fun, and I think it was very fun for me. I think that we tapped into a lot of very interesting things. But thanks for making the time for me, Mimi. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for including me. And so thank you for doing this whole thing. I mean, it's just amazing.